I have never been a man of many regrets. At 41 years old, my life seemed to be in the right place. A stable marriage, a solid career as an architect, and a routine that, though predictable, gave me a sense of security. But there was something inside me that I had never been able to name, something that lurked in the shadows of my most intimate thoughts, something I had never allowed to surface. My wife, Laura, was the embodiment of stability. We met in college, and since then she had been my anchor. But in recent years, something had changed. It wasn't her, it was me. Little by little, I began to feel like a stranger in my own life. The nights that were once filled with conversation and laughter were now silent, each of us lost in our own worlds. It was Laura who suggested that I spend a weekend fishing with her brother George. "You need some time away from the city," she said, with that calm smile that always soothed me. George was a 38-year-old man, successful and confident, but we had never been particularly close. He had been married for a few years and always seemed to be on the move, busy with his business ventures. I accepted the invitation more out of a sense of obligation than genuine interest. The idea of spending 2 days in a remote cabin with George didn't seem particularly appealing. But something inside me whispered that maybe this was an opportunity to escape my own mind, even if just for a brief moment. When I arrived at the cabin, George was already there. He was sitting on the porch, wearing a fitted t-shirt that highlighted his broad shoulders and a backward cap. His smile was easy, carefree, and he greeted me with a hug that caught me off guard. His scent was a mix of aftershave and something wilder, like damp earth after the rain. At that moment, something inside me trembled. Night fell quickly, and the lake was soon enveloped in a soft mist. George prepared dinner, and we talked about superficial things, work, family, the weather, but there was something in the way he looked at me, something beyond words. His eyes were intense, almost challenging, as if he were trying to decipher something in me. After dinner, we sat on the porch, each with a glass of whiskey in hand. The silence between us was comfortable, yet charged with an energy I couldn't ignore. George stretched his arms above his head, and his t-shirt lifted slightly, revealing a sliver of his toned stomach. I quickly looked away, but not before feeling a warmth rise up my neck. "Do you fish a lot?" he asked, breaking the silence. "Not really," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's more of an excuse to get out of the city." He laughed, a low, husky sound that made something inside me tighten. "I love coming here. It's like the outside world doesn't exist, you know." I knew exactly what he meant. There in that isolated cabin, it was easy to forget everything that held us back, but at the same time, it was impossible to ignore the tension growing between us. George stood up and walked over to the porch railing, looking out at the lake. I remained still, watching the outline of his body against the dark sky. He was a mature man, but there was a vitality in his stance, a confidence that was almost irresistible. Suddenly, he turned and our eyes met. For a moment, time seemed to stop. He took a step toward me and I felt my heart race. "Cray," he said softly, as if testing the sound of my name. The night around the cabin seemed to hold its breath, the distant sound of the lake's waters gently breaking on the shore. The yellowish light from the porch cast subtle shadows on George's face, highlighting the strong line of his jaw, the faint glow of his skin. The whiskey warmed in my hands, but not as much as the growing heat inside my chest. When he said my name, his voice carried a weight I wasn't sure I was ready to bear. The way he looked at me wasn't casual. There was a raw intensity there, as if he was waiting for a reaction from me, a sign, anything. My throat went dry. I took a deep breath, trying to find a response that wouldn't betray the turmoil inside me. But before I could say anything, he tilted his head slightly, his eyes still locked onto mine, and the silence between us became something tangible, dense, almost palpable. The cool night breeze blew gently, tussling his hair, carrying the woody scent of the cabin mixed with that masculine, warm fragrance I had noticed before. My fingers tightened around the glass as if they needed something to anchor me there. For an instant, I had the feeling that this night, in this place, was a point of no return. The night breeze rustled the leaves of the trees surrounding the cabin. The scent of damp earth and aged wood lingered in the air, mingled with the musky, woody perfume of George's skin. His voice came out low, laden with something I couldn't name. I don't know if it's the whiskey, but I'm feeling something different for you. I have this urge to kiss you. I'm sorry for being so forward, but I want to kiss you. What do you say? The silence that followed was almost deafening. My chest rose and fell irregularly as my mind struggled to process his words. The lake outside reflected the stars, and the world seemed suspended in that moment. George, I don't know what to say. I've never kissed another man. This has never even crossed my mind. He gave a half-smile, tilting his head slightly, as if he already knew about the confusion inside me. Then, with the same confidence he always carried in his posture, he took a step forward, closing the space between us even more. Come here. Kiss me and tell me what you think. I felt his firm hand touch the back of my neck, pulling me in with an unexpected gentleness, and before my brain could decide what to do, my body had already responded. His lips met mine, warm and firm, an electric shock running through my skin at the contact. His strong arms wrapped around me, his solid chest pressed against mine. The musky scent of his skin mixed with the woody taste of whiskey intoxicated me. The kiss started slow, almost as if he were giving me time to understand what was happening. But when my breath faltered and my body gave in, I felt the intensity grow. George deepened the kiss, his tongue sliding against mine, sending shivers down my spine. My hands, once hesitant, moved up to hold his arms, feeling the firmness of the muscles beneath his thin t-shirt. The sensation was new, intense, frighteningly good. When he finally pulled away, his face was just inches from mine, his dark eyes gleaming in the dim porch light. His warm breath brushed against my skin as he whispered, "So, what did you think?" Still trying to catch my breath, I felt an involuntary smile form on my lips before I answered. "I don't know. Let's kiss a little more so I can be sure." George chuckled softly, a husky, mischievous sound, before biting his lower lip lightly and murmuring, "You little tease, you liked it, didn't you? Come here." And without hesitation, he pulled me back into him, and our lips met once again, this time without doubts, without hesitation, just the heat of two bodies discovering an unexpected desire. The night was silent, with only the distant sound of the wind cutting through the trees around the cabin. The room was dark, but the pale moonlight seeped through the gaps in the curtain, casting soft shadows on the wooden walls. I was sleeping deeply until I felt a light movement on the mattress, a subtle tug on the blanket that woke me up. My heart raced before I even opened my eyes. The dim light revealed a nearby silhouette, and I felt the warmth of a body sliding under the blanket beside me. The unmistakable scent of George, woody, warm, mixed with something purely masculine, invaded my senses. He said nothing. He just settled next to me, his breathing steady but carrying a silent tension. The mattress sank slightly under his weight, and I could feel the heat radiating from his skin. Even without touching him directly, my entire body went rigid, my heart pounding against my chest. The darkness made everything more intense. Every sound, every tiny movement. His breath was too close to the back of my neck, and the air between us felt heavy, dense. Should I say something? Ask what he was doing? But deep down, I already knew. And maybe part of me wanted to see where that night would take us. That night was a point of no return. What happened between George and me stayed there, wrapped in the heat of our bodies and the silent complicity of the night. I did things I never imagined doing, felt things I never thought I would feel. I'd love to tell you everything, every detail, every sensation, but some things simply can't be said here. Some experiences are meant to be lived, kept in the skin, in the gaze, in the touch that lingers. And that night, under that blanket, something inside me changed forever. Morning came quietly, with the sun filtering through the trees and the gentle sound of the lake reflecting the calmness of the day. We woke up early and George, always playful, made jokes about everything, including the night before. His smile was easy teasing, but without pressure. I laughed, still unsure of how to process it all, but unable to deny the lightness I felt around him. Fishing was fun. He made comments about how I held the fishing rod, throwing in double entendres that made me roll my eyes and laugh, even though my mind was still stuck on the moments from the night before. I didn't want to talk about it, but when he joked, I played along, letting the ease of the moment take over. When the sun reached its peak, we returned to the cabin. The heat of the day called for a shower, and as soon as we arrived, I went straight to the bathroom. The warm water slid over my skin, relaxing my muscles as I let my mind wander. But then, a faint sound, a creak in the wood, brought me back. The door, which I knew had no lock, slowly opened. The steam from the shower blurred part of my vision, but I didn't need to see clearly to know who it was. George entered without hesitation. His gaze locked onto mine, and without a word, he slipped under the water with me. The heat of the steam mixed with the heat of his skin as he stepped closer, and this time I didn't resist. This time there was no hesitation. I allowed myself more. I gave in. And that morning, between the hot water and his firm arms, I knew there was no turning back. The afternoon passed in a mix of exhaustion and desire. I had barely recovered from the shower when George came looking for me again, with that mischievous smile and the endless energy that left me breathless. I had no idea where he got so much stamina, but every time our bodies met, everything became even better, more intense, more impossible to ignore. Time seemed to move faster than I wanted, and before we knew it, the sun was already beginning to set on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. The cabin, which for 2 days had been a parallel universe, now felt like just a temporary setting about to dissolve the moment we left. When it was time to go, we said our goodbyes without grand speeches. George looked at me with a playful glint in his eyes as if he knew exactly what I was thinking. Neither of us tried to drag out the moment. There was no need for dramatic words or impossible promises. We simply exchanged a knowing glance and a silent pact. No one would ever know anything. He went to his house. I went to mine. But no matter how much the world outside kept moving as usual, something inside me would never be the same again. What started as a simple weekend away from the city turned into something I could never have predicted. That's how I began my secret affair with my brother-in-law, an intense, forbidden relationship filled with moments that completely changed how I saw myself. If you want to hear this story uncut with all the details, the link is in the pinned comment. Kisses and see you next time. If you enjoyed this journey, subscribe to the channel and leave a like for more stories like this one.